What is the greatest comeback to an insult you've ever heard? My grandparents used to bicker. My grandmother generally came out on top, as she was fierier. One time, though, she was asking him to do a bunch of stuff, and he muttered, "If you'd lose some weight, you could do it yourself." She fixed her gaze on him, and glowered. "I'm thinking of getting rid of about 200 pounds of useless fat immediately," he replied. "You're going to cut off your foot?" Man, nobody bickers like old married couples bicker. They've had decades to perfect their craft. Someone yelled out in a Walmart, "I'm not ashamed of who I am." Another voice echoed back, "That's your parents' job." Back in middle school, I was at Walmart with a friend of mine looking for pants. Being a tomboy, I liked to wear baggy boys' pants, nor did I wear makeup. Another kid came up to me and snarkily asked, "Pfft, what are you? A boy or a girl?" And without missing a beat, I responded, "Why? Do you think I'm hot?" He just got flustered and walked away mumbling obscenities. This was the 90s, so that gender question actually was insulting to my 14-year-old brain. Not the greatest, but I still hold pride for my quick wit back then. Too bad that's all gone now. For some reason, everyone in high school thought I was a lesbian, so a straight dude in my grade walked by me and was trying to make fun of me/gay bash and said, "Well, at least I don't like girls." I just kinda stared at him and waited for it to click. Joe Pine interviewing Frank Zappa. Joe, "I guess your long hair makes you a woman." Frank, "I guess your wooden leg makes you a table." Saw a clip of a stand-up comedian the other day, and he says something along the lines of, "The first time I had sex it was terrible. The first time I had sex," and a woman chimes in with, "You mean yesterday?" Crowd laughs for a while, and while the comedian is waiting for them to calm down, you can see the gears turn in his head. Once it gets down to basically a few chuckles, he just says, "Glad you remember," and the crowd just lost their shit. It was amazing. I used to work with this like 70-year-old woman. She was our supervisor, and one day one of the ladies who worked with us told this old lady to kiss my ass, and the old lady replied, "Where do I start? You're so fat your crack goes all the way up your back." I asked my mother why she always wears makeup despite being in her 40s. She told me she wears makeup so she doesn't look like me. Edit, I was 9. A guy makes fun of his bald friend by rubbing his head and saying, "Wow, your head is as smooth as my wife's bottom." The friend also rubs his head and says, "Wow, you're right." Quiet guy in my art class got called queer bait. He replied with, "If I'm the bait, then you're the catch of the day." My 10-year-old cousin was pushed aside by an older student at school who also felt the need to call him a gay child. My cousin told him not to get his hopes up. One of my coworkers was cold calling customers, trying to get appointments to drum up business. One of them told him to go fuck his hand, and he responded with, "I've got that penciled in for 3. I should be done by 4 if you'd like to come in for an appointment then?" The guy laughed his ass off, and ended up coming in for the appointment. I had a coworker, also in sales, also cold calling, a take-no-shit middle-aged woman. When people hung up on us, sometimes we'd call back and play dumb. Often people would realize they were being rude. This is more business to business. Anyhow, this lady couldn't help herself, so she'd call back, feign the same polite friendliness, and say, "Hey, sorry, I think we were rudely disconnected." During WW1, Switzerland had a tiny standing army, but they were very skilled marksmen. Wilhelm II of Germany asked what 250,000 Swiss troops would do if he decided to invade with 500,000 German troops. The Swiss said, "Shoot twice and go home." Winston Churchill, of course. Lady Nancy asked her, "Winston, if you were my husband, I'd poison your tea." Churchill, "Nancy, if I were your husband, I'd drink it." Winston, "You are drunk, disgustingly drunk." "Yes, madam, but you're fat. And when morning comes, I shall be sober." "You sure do talk a lot for never saying anything." In Mexico, we use the word cantinfleur for that. It comes from a comedian with a long career from the 30s to the 80s named Cantinflas, and that was his shtick, talking too much but never saying anything. I was the one insulted, but not the one with the comeback. I was out with a coworker and her friends and my buddy, and I were leaving a little too early for her sensibilities. She jokingly got up in my face and said, "Smell that? Smells like pussy." A guy playing at the pool table next to us stepped forward and said, I'm sorry, that must be me. I just ate. It was amazing. Not heard, but read. Easily the Spartans replied to Philip II of Macedon. As Philip II of Macedon was conquering Greek city-states left and right, Sparta was left alone. Philip had achieved a crushing victory, and Sparta was relatively weak and without walls. Philip sent a message to the Spartans saying, "If I invade Laconia you will be destroyed, never to rise again." The Spartans replied with one word, "If." This is actually where the word, laconic, came from. My grandma asked my cousin, who'd had lots of partners and 2 kids at this point, if she was ever going to get married. Cousin, it's not the same nowadays. We don't buy cars without test driving them first. Grandma, yeah? But they don't let you put 100,000 miles on them either. Point goes to Granny. 18th century British radical politician John Wilkes was told in Parliament by a political opponent, "Sir, I do not know whether you will die on the gallows or of the pox." Wilkes shot back with, "That depends, my lord, on whether I embrace your lordship's principles or your mistress." Imagine hitting someone with such a fire burn that people are discussing it 250 years later. I've been called worse things by better people. For context, this was famously said by former Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau when he found out Richard Nixon called him an a-hole. A friend of mine was getting bitched at by these 2 identical twin girls in a class I had once. He replied with a troubling look on his face and said, "If you 2 are identical, how come only one of you are hot?" That dude played the long game as those 2 girls looked rather perplexed for the rest of the session. Sorry on this topic. If you want to incite chaos, go on a girl's Instagram and find a group photo of 3 or more. Then comment, "You 2 look great." Edit, I love how my first goal is advice on how to cause legal chaos. If I knew this was the case, I would have given more tips. Edit number 2, some people are calling me Eris. Apparently my tips for chaos came straight out of Eris's playbook. Best part is when I bought my second car, I named it after Eris, because the car was chaotic, and it was going to have a red/black color scheme. I just think that's funny. In middle school a boy asked when I was going to grow some boobs, so I asked him when he was donating his. I'm still really proud of that one. Edit, I didn't expect this to blow up, but I remember this clearly. He was walking out of English, I was walking in. We met at the doorway and were chest to chest. And he looks me in the eye and says, "Grow some tits." Without missing a beat I reply dead-faced, "Donate yours." Then proceed to proudly walk to my desk with a big smile. Also I did eventually grow some boobs. They are small but they are nice. The greatest comeback I witnessed was when Kumail Nanjiani was on Mean Tweets, and someone asked, "Is your dick multiple colors?" And he said, "Yes. Every shade of your mom's lipstick." What are you looking at? I'm still trying to find out. On a construction site one afternoon, different trades were working in the same area. Like silly team sports, the Sparkies always hang with the Sparkies and the Turd Wranglers always hang with the Turd Wranglers, and anytime they're together it turns into a pointless dick measuring contest, usually not literally. One particularly childish exchange saw 2 men chopping back and forth, "My dick biggest, blah blah blah." Finally one of them spits out this classic, "I've got girth like a can of corn." And the clap back was unforgettable. "But you've got length like a can of tuna." Everyone busted up. Mr. Girth tried to hide his embarrassment, but was tied up. No comeback. And a room of men laughing uncontrollably. Good times. Context: John Oliver from HBO interviews Stephen Hawking, may he rest in peace. J.O. And there may be a universe where I am more intelligent than you. S.H. There may even be a universe where you are funny. The classic, "You're adopted. At least my parents chose to have me." My grandma got into a fight at the grocery store with a guy who told my 9-year-old brother to move the fuck out of the way. They were going at it, and his final words were, "Suck my dick, bitch," she said across the store. "If I could find it, bitch." Edit, not Walmart. Even better ALDI. A friend in high school on our way to a track meet. He was staring at a car in the parking that was really nice. When this bag saw him. Bag, why bothering looking at that when you know you'll never be able to get one? My friend, the same reason you watch Norp. The entire bus erupted, and it's still one of the funniest things I've ever heard. A dude in my class called out a semi-friend of mine that people are talking behind his back. In fact, that wasn't the case, as far as I know, and that guy said, "Well, you know what to say about you. Nothing, nobody fucking cares." Many years ago, when we were about 18, a friend of mine was arguing with another person we knew. This person was trying to be a badass and intimidate my buddy. He says, "My feet are registered." Without missing a beat, my friend replies, "Where? Health and sanitation?" 40 years later, I still crack up at this when it comes to mind. What is the greatest comeback to an insult you've ever heard? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.